Hello, I'm Ben Backwell, CEO of the Global Wind Energy Council, and I'm delighted to join you today to host the virtual launch of the Ocean Renewable Energy Action Coalition's report, The Power of Our Ocean, which outlines a roadmap to the sustainable scale-up of ocean-based renewable energy around the world. As we near the anniversary of the Paris Agreement this month, the report outlines a vision for how we can get the world on a trajectory to limit global warming to within 1.5 degrees by harnessing offshore energy and installing 1,400 gigawatts of offshore wind globally by 2050. That's 1,400 gigawatts. Today's report launch marks OREAC's response to the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy and its findings, which were released yesterday. We'll be speaking shortly with two members of the OREAC coalition on what the new report contains, and we'll also be joined by representatives of different governments that are committing to offshore wind. First, to provide some scene-setting remarks, we are privileged to have with us a member of the Ocean Panel, Ambassador Peter Thomson, UN Special Envoy for the Ocean, as well as Mr. Gonzalo Munoz, the COP25 High-Level Climate Action Champion, nominated to this role by Chile, which also serves as a member of the Ocean Panel. I will hand the floor first to Ambassador Peter Thomson for his remarks. Ambassador.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to all who are attending this meeting gathered here today in cyberspace. Only a few decades ago, to entertain such a mode of meeting on a subject of such great importance to the future of humanity would have been pipe dreaming. And yet here we are. Such is the power of human innovation and our ability to adapt in the face of necessity. Necessity comes to us these days in the form of 1 million animal and plant species on the verge of extinction, in a knowledge that the health of the ocean is caught in a spiral of decline, with our planet on course for over 3 degrees Celsius global warming before the end of this century, with commensurate escalation and devastation of natural disasters. Necessity means we're going to innovate and adapt in so many inspiring ways between now and 2050. And on that blue-green recovery road, from the findings of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy to those of the OECD, from the World Economic Forum to the IEA, and many others more, we see affirmation of offshore wind energy as a champion in the race to a carbon-neutral world by 2050. Closely twinned to this surge in offshore wind energy, comprehensive marine spatial planning of every national exclusive economic zone is required, so that science and marine and coastal ecosystems are given due respect, so that local authorities are fully consulted, and so that investors in offshore renewable energy have clear guidelines to work within. In so saying, I add my voice to those calling upon governments to now commit to offshore renewable energy in order to make the smartest choice for the development of a sustainable ocean-based economy. I'm delighted to participate in today's launch of OREAC's report, The Power of Our Ocean. I applaud OREAC's global vision of building 1,400 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050 in order to maintain a global warming pathway well below 2 degrees Celsius, and of every region of the world having a thriving and sustainable ocean renewable energy industry. For people, planet, and prosperity, for a sustainable future for all on planet Earth, the harnessing of offshore renewable energy provides a smart, clean, eminently achievable solution. Let us take the current while it serves. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ambassador Thomson, for these inspiring words on the power of human innovation and this achievable solution. I will now hand the floor to Gonzalo Munoz for his remarks.
As the high-level climate action champion for COP25 under the UNFCCC, I welcome the new report, The Power of Oceans, launched today by the Ocean Renewable Energy Action Coalition. This report delivers the message that ocean-based renewable energy, like offshore wind, must be dramatically scaled up around the world in order to achieve Paris compliance scenarios which limit global warming to within 1.5 degrees of pre-industrial levels. It also issues a call to action to governments and non-state actors worldwide to work together for this goal. As we round the corner into 2021 and towards the COP26 summit ahead, we're seeing increasing momentum from non-state actors to accelerate the shift to a decarbonized economy and embrace sustainability as a core tenet of growth. This momentum can be seen through the Race to Zero campaign, which unites members under the same overarching goal, achieving net zero emissions by 2050 at the very latest. So oceans have a role to play in the Race to Zero, definitely. Policymakers can commit to science-based sustainable use of ocean resources, and businesses can scale up ocean-based renewable energy production. We know the ocean is the source
co-leads of the OREAC coalition to tell us a little bit more about the report and the work of the coalition itself. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Stephen Bull, Senior Vice President for Offshore Wind at Equinor, and Mr. Ben Sykes, Head of Market Development, Consenting and External Affairs at Ørsted. Afternoon, Stephen and Ben, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. It's great to be speaking to you today.
Good to see you, Ben.
Now, I'm going to start with you, Ben. So what is OREAC and what is your vision for 1,400 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050?
Thanks, Ben. So the OREAC stands for the Offshore Renewable Energy Action Coalition. It's an initiative which was pulled together by Stephen and myself last year, in fact, bringing together major parts of the offshore wind and offshore renewables industry in response to the 2019 call for ocean-based climate action by the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, or the Ocean Panel as it's known, which is the 14 heads of state that have been driving this agenda. So we've got developers like Equinor and Ørsted, the companies that Stephen and I work for. We've got a lot of other organisations in the supply chain, organisations such as yours, Ben, with GWEC, and also others right across the world. So it's a global coalition of industry looking at how we can take action to deliver the ambitions of the high-level panel. Our 1,400 terawatts of ocean-based renewable energy by 2050, we believe that can be achieved from offshore wind. That's a very ambitious target. That would mean that the oceans were supplying something like 10% of the world's electricity and saving over 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually in terms of emissions. So a huge impact, very important part of getting to net zero and tackling climate change. And what we've seen is that every region in the world can have a thriving, sustainable ocean renewable energy industry. 1,400 gigawatts is a big number. We're only at around 32, 33 gigawatts in the world today. And it's also ambitious when we look at other scenarios. If we look at the International Energy Agency's World Outlook, they've got something like 570 gigawatts by 2040. So that would be getting us to around 1,000 gigawatts, 1 terawatt. We think we can go further by 2050. And IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, has also got a 1 terawatt ambition. So we are being very ambitious here with 1,400 gigawatts, 1.4 terawatts, but we do believe it's achievable. And our report is all about how that can happen.
Thanks, Benj. So indeed, 1,400 gigawatts is a very ambitious number, but I think your experience, Benj, in Europe and the UK shows, what kind of progress can be made if the right steps are taken. Now, in order to provide a roadmap to achieve this vision, OREAC published a report yesterday called The Power of Our Ocean in response to the Ocean Panel report. And Stephen, there's a growing body of literature and a kind of rising ambition around offshore wind, but what's unique about this report?
Well, thanks, Ben. I suppose what's different about this one is that we're bringing the collective industry experience and knowledge to provide this global perspective for offshore wind, and particularly defining the key building blocks for delivering a global industry in new markets especially. And if you think about it, often we're asked by industry and also policymakers, what are the key questions that we need to ask in terms of actually developing this business across the world? And we can highlight the benefits of this, and particularly for new markets and specifically considerations that require attention. So our vision really clearly is to develop this industry at a sustainable level, and also to try and deploy the capacity needed to meet our vision. As Ben has outlined, we recommend a series of 5 fundamental building blocks. And these are really important ones because what we're looking for is a stable policy framework. We're looking for a visible pipeline for project deployment, properly resourced institutions, a supportive and engaged public, and then finally, a competitive environment. And as we develop the ocean economy, we'll see that marine spatial planning and effective management of sea users will also be increasingly important too. So we also do discuss this in our report, and also with many examples across the world. The final point to make also is that the importance of safety and sustainability, and actually how to manage impacts to the environment from offshore wind as well.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So it's bringing it all together, I guess, is one of the important aspects of this report, and really linking our offshore wind industry to the kind of wider questions around ocean sustainability as well, which I think is really, really fascinating. Going back to you, Benj, beyond the broader decarbonisation effects of offshore wind that make it important in itself, how does ocean-based renewable energy contribute to economic recovery, particularly in the wake of the pandemic and COVID-19?
It's such an important question, Ben, and of course people across the world have been so badly affected by the impact of this dreadful pandemic, and the green recovery is more than just words. It is very much a sustainable pathway out of the economic and social difficulties that the pandemic has created. So our report, which is in response to the Ocean Panel's report, Transformations for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, what it highlights is that by government and industry working together, we can not only unlock the low carbon benefits, as you've mentioned, from offshore renewables, and I talked about the billions of tons of CO2 every year that can be abated through these technologies, but it's also going to generate jobs, it's going to boost economic growth, and it's going to enable us to tackle climate change at the same time as building strong coastal and other economies around the world. We've seen this in the markets where offshore wind is already thriving. We know that offshore wind and other ocean renewable technologies do transform communities. They bring high quality, sustainable jobs, and we know that there will be hundreds of thousands of jobs around the world on the back of this 1,400 gigawatts that we've been talking about. So it's not only good for the environment, it's not only good for climate change, it's great for economies. It also produces much cleaner air. It enables us to have high air quality. So there's a whole range of reasons why ocean renewable energy is such an important part of our future, both out of the COVID pandemic, but also tackling climate change.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. And finally, Stephen, how can countries use this report for nurturing their own offshore wind sectors, and how will OREAC be playing a part in helping countries to step up?
Well, there, Ben, as we all agree on, there's no time to lose in tackling climate change. And it's important that we can take action now, but also give politicians and policymakers a chance to actually forward a vision and direction. So what our report does, it presents case studies of how different countries have approached their delivery of an offshore wind industry. And we hope this is really important information for policymakers to actually create their own conditions for their own market. Now, obviously, one size doesn't fit all here. We have many different variations of offshore wind policy frameworks within Europe, but also that we've actually hoped that the building blocks, the 5 building blocks I mentioned, serve as the guiding principles for countries looking to establish or grow their offshore wind markets. Also, the report highlights some of the need for collaboration between industry, government, key stakeholders as well, and also ensure sustainable deployment of offshore wind and other ocean renewable energy technologies. So as also part of the coalition's activities, GWEC and WRI have been engaging with governments across the world, where they can access support on scaling up their offshore wind markets, as well as publishing important resources such as this report, which Ben just mentioned, and also particularly a market readiness assessment toolkit. Now, we really hope that these resources can be used in the future and inspire new markets to initiate the conversation on what is needed to develop a truly global offshore wind industry.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And I mean, from my point of view, it's great having both of you as champions for this initiative, particularly because you're both from companies that are kind of, actually walking the walk and the cutting edge of making this happen around the world. So it's been good talking to you both. I look forward to working with you. And for those of you watching, please reach out, have a look at the report, and reach out to OREAC and see how you can get involved. Thanks, guys, for taking part today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ben.
Pleasure.
Now, a big part of OREAC's work has been to raise awareness of sustainable ocean-based renewable energy and work with governments around the world to realize their own offshore wind and other ocean energy potentials. We're joined today by a few government representatives who will be sharing their own statements of support and vision for offshore wind. I'll hand the floor first to Mr. Tiago Ferreira, the president of EPE, the Energy Research Office of Brazil, for his remarks. Tiago, welcome.
Hello, I'm Tiago Barral, Executive President of EPE, the Federal Office for Energy Planning Studies in Brazil. Throughout 2019, EPE developed a first roadmap for offshore wind in Brazil. This roadmap aimed at addressing the main challenges and opportunities for offshore wind development in the national context. This work benefited from close collaboration with many relevant public stakeholders, such as the Federal Environmental Agency, the Electricity Regulator, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and the Brazilian Navy. We also had valuable contribution from the private sector, and we had support from different multilateral agencies, helping us understand the main features of this technology, which is still unprecedented in Brazil. With this effort, it is possible to affirm that the Brazilian potential is huge. Along its coast, Brazil has 700 gigawatt of offshore wind potential. Meanwhile, we have now 7 different offshore wind farms at their initial development stage, having required environmental licensing. This proves that offshore wind is gaining momentum, and we must address regulatory and market gaps as this technology gains competitiveness worldwide. We must be aware that adequate ports, infrastructure, and logistics will be key as well, and we believe it's possible to take advantage of synergies with oil and gas industry and expertise. Looking ahead, it's time to make regulatory framework more friendly to entrepreneurs so that offshore wind can find a place in a growing and more competitive market for renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago. And we at GWEC and OREAC are incredibly excited about the nascent but tremendous offshore wind opportunity in Brazil. Next, I'd like to hand the floor to Mr. Carl John, Renewable Energy Specialist from the UK's Department for International Trade, who will tell us how the UK, as the world's currently biggest offshore wind market, is accelerating sector growth. Carl.
Good morning. My name is Carl John. I work for the Department for International Trade. We're the department looking to attract foreign direct investors into the UK, but at the same time ensuring companies who operate in the UK have a route to export their goods and services to the rest of the world. I've been asked to give you a whistle-stop tour of offshore wind in the UK. The operational fleet in the UK is currently at 10 gigawatts. We are in the process of constructing 4 gigawatts as we speak, and the latest CFD round brought forward 5.5 gigawatts to be built by 2025. By 2025, the operational fleet in the UK will be around 20 gigawatts. On the 6th of October, the Prime Minister announced an increase of the ambition of 30 gigawatts by 2030 to one of 40 gigawatts. In addition, adding 1 gigawatt of floating offshore wind. This means in the latter half of the decade, we will need to install 20 gigawatts at an annual run rate of around about 4 gigawatts. Now, the 2050 context is also very important. The UK government has signed legally binding net zero carbon targets. And this means that we need to tackle decarbonisation of the heating and the transport network. And electricity will play a crucial role one way or the other, whether it's directly into batteries or using the hydrogen economy. The UK government will shortly be releasing a white paper which will outline the direction of travel of this technology going forward. But I think one thing that is very clear currently is that offshore wind will play a major role going forward.
Thank you, Carl. We are getting close to the end of our launch event today, so I want to thank all of our speakers again for joining us and for sharing their support and vision for how offshore wind and other forms of ocean-based renewable energy can play a critical role in decarbonising the planet. We've had a view into different markets and development across the sector, and we've also had strong messages and guidance from this report from OREAC, which can help other governments and stakeholders work together to achieve this 1,400 gigawatt vision by 2050. I encourage everyone watching to download the report on the OREAC page, which can be found on the GWEC website, and join us on this journey to create thriving, prosperous and sustainable ocean-based economies in the decades to come. Don't forget to join us this afternoon for another exciting session on Asia's emerging offshore wind markets to find out about how Asia will play an increasingly important role in driving the offshore wind growth that we anticipate in this report globally. Thank you very much.